we're now hitting the top of the hour, and I'd like to welcome everyone who's just joining in to the webinar so far. And we've got the first 130 people in for the webinar. So it's our 100th webinar. We've been doing these for five and a half years. I almost feel like a round of applause is in order. But perhaps you could, I think, congratulations into the chat room. So we're looking at 10 smart ways to improve average handling time, and delighted to be joined by two industry veterans. Carolyn Blunt from Real Results. Carolyn, it's a training company, and I guess you've trained a very large number of contact centers in your time in business.
Oh yeah, absolutely, thousands of frontline staff and team managers all over the UK now, and globally now as well. India we went this year, so that was interesting. Yeah, excellent,
fabulous. And Carolyn is also the author of what is probably the definitive book on providing customer service over social media, which he published last year with, earlier in the year with Martin Hill Wilson. Delighted also to be joined by another industry veteran, Mike Murphy from Interactive Intelligence. And Mike, this must be about your 10th or 12th webinar.
Oh my goodness, I haven't been counting, Jonathan.
So
apologies.
Quite a number on.
I'll take an action for the next one to get a count.
Carolyn's going to be looking at what all the fuss is about on AHT, and Mike's going to be looking at some of the technology tools. Yeah. We're also going to be doing lots of top tips and questions from the audience. If you want the slides, they're going to be available in the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat, and there will be a box of chocolates or a bottle of champagne for the best tip, your choice on that one. And if you want to watch the webinar, it's on the same link here, GoToMeeting/register, and here's the details there. It's what you dialed into today if you want to watch the replay. So chat room, no commercial messages allowed in the chat room. If you're going to put a web address or an email, please only do that through a direct message and keep it all nice and polite. There is a link here saying download webinar slides, and the link is working quite nicely on there. Once you clicked on it, if you want to download the slides, it's not coming down, you can press, I think, the right button and save as, so you can do that. So once you logged into the chat room, and you can also download the chat log by clicking this little filing tray icon there if you want to pull down the chat log at the end of the session. So I'm going to start off by putting up a poll for everyone. And what I'd like to do is to say, how long is your average handling time? So if you'd just like to vote on that, the choices are 0 to 59 seconds, which is just up to a minute, 60 to 119 seconds, which is between 1 and 2 minutes, 120 to 239 seconds, which is 2 or 3 minutes, 240 to 359 seconds, which is 4 or 5 minutes, or more than 6 minutes. So they're the choices on there. So it'd be quite interesting to see the figures here. Mike, I think the industry average is about 240.
Yeah, I think it's also changed quite a bit, Jonty, as the sort of like the calls have become more, rather the contacts have become a bit more complex, not necessarily the same. Excuse me, everybody. So in that sense, I think it's expanded compared to what it used to be in the sort of earlier days. Again, depending upon what the business is actually doing. But I think the number you mentioned is a good average.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the average that's come up. And actually, now I have incorrect information for you. It looks like things have certainly got much more complex. 42% of our audience have more than 6 minutes call times. That Carolyn, sort of points to things getting more complex all the time.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I want to see, really, because it would hopefully correspond with people taking use of self-serve and using other channels for more simple questions, so that they're using social or live chat, and that voice becomes something that we're going to just use for the more complex things that do take a bit longer.
Oh, so that's interesting. More complexity there. 153 people voted on that poll. Right, I'm going to now going to jump to another poll, which is how do you use average handling time? And just be interested to see how people are using this in your business. You can tick for all that apply. So do you use average handling time for forecasting or resource planning? Do you use it to measure efficiency? Do you use it to target, or do you target agents on AHT? Do you reward agents in some way, financially or otherwise, with average handling time? Or do you use it to identify training issues? So if you'd just like to vote on that, I think that's going to be quite a fascinating. I've never seen actually any statistics on the use of average handling time. If you use average handling time for any other purposes, please pop those into the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat. We'd like to see the results of that. So just a couple of people voting still. Here we go. Let me just close it now. And here's the poll. And so 71% people using it for forecasting or resource planning. 67% are using it as a measure of efficiency. 43% are targeting agents on this. 24% rewarding agents on their average handling time, which for me is a little worrying. And 56% of people are using it to identify training issues. So I think, Carolyn, there's some great food for thought here. And I think when we shortly go onto your session, I think there's going to be some quite interesting points that you're going to address to this. So I'm just going to hand the baton now across to Carolyn, and Carolyn's going to run us through quite an interesting presentation called "What's All the Fuss About Average Handling Time?" So, Carolyn, if you'd like to put the slides up on your screen, and
Sure.
There we are.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really liked seeing that poll because I'd hoped that people would say they use AHT for forecasting and resource planning, so that's really encouraging, and it's also really great to use it for identifying training needs. So we will get into some of that in this presentation. So I'm going to talk for approximately the next 20 minutes on AHT. Anyone who's heard me speaking before will probably know that I could speak for an hour on this topic, and in fact I have done, and I've recorded it, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end if you want even more afterwards. So let's have a think about what's all the fuss about average handling time, because it is a hotly debated topic. So there are obviously some advantages of using AHT, and those have come up in the poll, which has been fantastic, because I am a firm believer in that it's an absolutely great way to ensure that we do good workforce management, that we resource plan effectively, that we understand the peaks, the troughs, the call durations, and then we can ensure that we have the resource plan to match that. So I think without that metric we would be quite lost at sea without it. So I definitely think it's something that's not going to go away. We do still need to always use AHT, but obviously there is a counter argument about it, particularly that it's detrimental to the customer experience, because it should take as long as it takes to ensure that that customer is happy. And if agents are heavily targeted on AHT, the argument is obviously that they're going to rush customers off the phone, and customers are going to end up calling back, or they're going to leave negative customer satisfaction survey results and things like that. So there is a really strong argument that it is detrimental to customer experience, and the way in which we're going to think about solving that is making sure that we use it in quite a balanced way. So I'll talk a bit more about how we can do that. Another advantage of using AHT, and that came up in your poll, which is fantastic, is that it does enable training needs to be spotted and met. So obviously Mike's going to talk a little bit more after I finish speaking around the technology element, but I think it's really great if your system can spot and report back to you not only AHT but also thinking about where there might be some long silences in calls, and if you can identify those, drill in, listen to what's causing that, then quite often it can be that an agent is unsure, they've put the customer on hold while they've gone to find out some information, and all that's adding to your AHT, and actually we could resolve that perhaps with some training. I also obviously really value the training side, and I would say that running a training company, but particularly around confidence of advisors to keep control of calls is really important for AHT, and also how effectively they bring that call to a close is really important, so that we get a really good balance between building rapport but not allowing the call to go off at a tangent and take far longer than it needs to. So another negative point about AHT that I hear a lot is that people will say it's a distraction and it's a source of pressure for agents. So particularly if there are red flags coming up in in terms of when it's going over AHT, if there's targets, if there's people in the queue on the wall boards, and that's another hotly debated topic. That it can stop the agent really giving that customer that undivided attention and that level of service that they need, and again just getting back to rushing them off and getting rid of them, and that's not what we want for a great experience. Another good point about AHT though is that it provides a focus for cost to serve calculations, and I am really keenly focused on cost to serve, because I think it's something that we do need to make sure is effective, otherwise the contact centre is seen as a cost to the organisation in a negative way. And what I'm really happy about in recent years is that we're seeing organisations changing their attitude towards the contact centre part of their business and seeing it as a way that it's quite integral to customer relationship management, and it's a sales opportunity, and it's a rich source of data and information, and it's moving closer towards marketing now as well. So actually it's great to have that AHT metric and be able to think about how much it costs us to serve each customer when they call in. We can then think about our multi-channel strategy and our self-serve strategies as well. So that is really valuable data. For example, if I have an agent who's giving great service but they spend an hour with a customer and the customer doesn't buy anything or doesn't get their problem resolved, there's a cost to that, and the agent needs to be aware of how much that is, and we need to be able to understand how we get rid of some of those unnecessary costs. So it's really important for that. And finally, it can be seen as a negative in that it can demotivate agents, which I think, Jonty, you were alluding to, being a little bit disappointed about the targeting of agents with AHT, and this is probably why it's used as a counter-argument for AHT when we do use targets, because if I think I'm doing a great job as an agent but I'm not hitting AHT, that's really quite demoralising for me. So we do need to be quite sensitive when we think about coaching and managing people and how we're feeding back about their performance against AHT. So with that in mind, I'd like us to meet Sue. So let's just have a quick introduction to Sue. Sue has been in your contact centre for 30 years. She's lovely, she's a really warm person, she's really helpful, she'd do anything for anybody. She's really knowledgeable because she's been there a long time. There's not a lot that Sue doesn't know. She's like the oracle of the contact centre that everybody goes to. And she's also really accurate in the information that she gives to customers. She stays up to date with all the bulletins, and she reads all the emails, and she knows everything. She knows it before most of the managers. She's really, really positive, and her customers therefore love her. Staff love her. She is a fantastic support for new starters, and she's a really happy, bubbly person. She loves her job. She comes into work with a really great attitude, and that's never changed in 30 years. So loads of pros, but there are some cons in that Sue is over her AHT regularly despite coaching. She gets so much rapport, she has so much empathy that her calls do take quite a long time. She goes over and above to help customers, and naturally that takes time. So that's just a little bit of a profile around Sue, and I'd like us to now compare Sue to Carla. So I'd like you to meet Carla. Carla's been in the business for a year. she's efficient, she's really clear, she's really focused, she's super bright, she's quite ambitious, but she is still learning and she can make some assumptions. So, for example, when I was sitting side by side with Cara, she gave the customer some information down the phone without double checking it, and actually when I checked it afterwards, what she'd said was not the case. So that will actually come back and bite further down in the service chain. But she got that customer off the phone, she met her AHT target as she does consistently, she sounded really confident and authoritative, the customer bought what she said, I bought it at the time, but it was only when I double checked that I found out that actually she'd made some assumptions. Some of the cons with Cara is that customers can feel a bit rushed and that they then make repeat callbacks, or when that misinformation comes out later in the service chain, their CSAT, customer satisfaction score, is more negative. So what we're noticing is a bit of a different approach between Sue and Cara, and if we look at AHT as a target alone, Cara is doing really well and Sue isn't. But when we put the CSAT measures against those agents alongside their AHT, actually Sue's CSAT scores are far better than Cara's. So one of the smart ways that we can use AHT is to make sure that we use it in conjunction with other metrics. And absolutely we do want to support Sue to see cost to serve and those sorts of informations that are going to help her to realise that, you know, we can't keep customers waiting in the queue because you're having a nice chat about somebody's holiday. We do have to move it on, but we've got to find this balance between where Cara's at and where Sue's at. So I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And this massive debate that goes on about AHT, quite often people feel like they have to either say yes or no to how AHT is used. And actually what we want to do is find a happy middle ground with it. So there are some frequently asked questions that I come across around AHT. And the first one is often, what should my AHT be? As if I'm going to know that answer. And it's really what I call the string question, because it really is how long is a piece of string. But I think when people are asking me that question, what they're really wanting to know is what's the UK benchmark, I guess. So the average for the UK AHT is around 250 seconds, and that comes from Bright Index research. But of course that's going to vary between different sectors. So one of our clients gives legal advice down the phone. They do an employee support line, and their AHT is an hour, because they have to understand the situation and they have to talk through the legalities and the options and all that sort of thing. So it's absolutely normal that a call would take an hour. Whereas another client, which is a retail client, and they have customers calling in to place orders, to make payments, their AHT is 3 minutes 10 seconds. So it absolutely does vary, but if we look at the research that Bright Index have done, and you're looking for a benchmark, then 250 is about that. However, there's, you know, a high end of that of 753 in their research, and the lowest was that they found was 129 seconds. So average call duration can vary, but there's some stats for that question. Question number 2, going back to Sue and Cara, how do we solve that Sue and Cara problem, because it's a really common one in most contact centres. So this is what I call the balance question. How do we find this happy medium between the sort of level of service that Sue gives and the performance that Cara provides? So as I touched on earlier, it is about comparing average handling time to other agent performance metrics. So first contact resolution or customer satisfaction are really important. So that means your advisors can't hide behind that whole phrase of "I take as long as it takes to make sure the customer is happy." We'll look at the CSAT and decide whether that's working or not. So that's quite important. Thinking about training and communication, so making sure that your advisors know what is the cost to serve each customer. I use that quite a lot when I do training courses with frontline. I will ask them, do you know how much it costs to provide the service that we give over the phone to each caller on average, and they usually don't have any commercial awareness around that. So it's quite important that they can recognise it, because sometimes when we're talking about reducing AHT, this whole WIFM, what's in it for me, can surface, because if I am more efficient, does that mean that I'm going to do my mate who sits next to me out of a job? And you know, what's the impact, and why should I want to speed up the calls? If I am Sue, actually one of the things I love about my job is talking to people and having that rapport. So although we were maybe lower in we rewarding agents on AHT, I think that is quite a good strategy to think about. It was only like 25% of people who voted around using that, but I would encourage us to consider what are our incentives for AHT from a positive point of view, not just on its own, but looking at it in conjunction with customer satisfaction as well. And I think, like I've said, not allowing agents to hide behind that phrase, and making sure that in training sessions we're really helping them to have control of calls and the skills that are involved in that, and the confidence, because often calls take longer when agents sound unsure, and that's when customers take control of the call and it can tend to run away. So we need to support their ability to control that, and at the same time to have a nice level of rapport. So making sure it's not too blunt, but making sure that also it doesn't run away. So that's the important balance with it. And thirdly, how can I reduce my AHT? Well, I know Mike's got lots up his sleeve for you around the technology angle of this. So this is what I call the efficiency question. So this is about thinking about all the things that you can use to reduce your AHT, because that is an efficient thing to do, and most customers do want to be, have their issue resolved quickly, so it's a win-win. So we do need to think about technology, we do need to think about our IVR and our routing, as Mike will go through with you. We do need to think about our systems being streamlined. How many times do your advisors alt and tab when they're on a call? Because all of that is taking time. If they're working through 10 different screens and systems, then that all takes time. And I hate hearing advisors and agents saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry, the system's on a go slow today," because that again is all adding to your AHT. So if you've got issues, then those need to be fixed. We need to be thinking about multi-channel and self-serve and how that all ties together. We need to be thinking about, are we making use of speech analytics? Have we got a good knowledge base for people to search that's quick and efficient and gives them the answers they need at their fingertips? We also need to make sure that messages that are consistent coming down from your boardroom to the floor in the contact centre, because I've spent time in boardrooms where the senior team have said to me, AHT, as far as agents concerned, doesn't exist, we don't target them on it, we don't want them to be distracted by it and demotivated by it, but yet when I've gone down to the floor, it's plastered on the whiteboards, and agents are very painfully aware of it, and at team manager level it's brought up in their one-to-ones, and that's quite confusing. So I think it is worth getting really clear about what is your organisational strategy on AHT from top to bottom. What do you want as a business, as an organisation, and then you can think about doing your business case for any technology and knowledge base and other things that you can get to help you with that. And absolutely the training element, so taking advisors and agents off the phones and spending time listening to calls where AHT has run away with itself, and we need to look at how that happened, where were the opportunities to bring that back on track, how do they build rapport, how do they show empathy, how do they handle difficult calls. That is still one of our top selling courses, how to handle difficult calls, because it's the more complex calls, as we've seen in your poll, Jonty, that take longer. So finally, thinking about just some of the things that you can do. So reviewing your agent utilization. So if you do decide that you need more time, where can you get it from without increasing your head count? So again, kindly provided by Bright Index is some research around agent utilization. And in an average workday, we see that they're spending sort of 42% of their time on the phone, actually talking, 18% of their time idle. 11% in wrap, and 27% of their time doing other activities. So what those other activities are might be worth investigating in your organisation and seeing again where those could be potentially streamlined. So that's kind of the end. Or if you still want more, because like I said when I started, I could talk forever on this topic. I've got a chance for you to win a 45-minute average handling time masterclass video with me, which is worth £199. So you're very welcome to click on that and enter for your chance to win. And we'll be happy to give that away in October. So back to you, John T, unless there's anything you want to ask or share at this time.
Thank you very much for that, indeed. We've got a number of questions coming through, but before we do that, just want to do a quick poll on a point that Carolyn brought up in her presentation, and that is, are you identifying silence in calls? So just as a way of identifying problems that are happening either with training or in your systems. So are you regularly identifying silence in calls? This is something that you can do with call recording or with speech analytics.
Right. Yeah.
Tends to do. So it's just like to vote on that. It's a good way of highlighting issues that are going on there. Interesting one, if you've got speech analytics, identifying crosstalk, where you've got two people talking at the same time.
Definitely.
Which is a way of identifying if there's a sort of a problem with either the telephone lines or with rapport building going on there. So just have a quick look at that. Have a quick look at that poll, and here are the answers: 48% yes, 38% no, and 13% not sure. Carolyn, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's good that almost half of the audience are saying that they do identify silence in calls. That's brilliant. Because that is a great opportunity to drill into that and see what it is. And sometimes it's the customer, sometimes they say, oh, hang on a minute, I'll have to go and find my policy number or whatever, and they shuffle off for 20 minutes. I've seen that happen, which is painful.
Not quietly.
Yeah, and and that's hard for your advisors. This is where that's out of their control, and we have to be really careful about targeting them on AHT, because that, from a statistical level, might look bad, but there was nothing that they could do in that situation. But if it's a training need, so like I say, they're putting the caller on hold and they're going and asking Sue, the oracle of the contact centre, what do I do about this? Then that is a training need that we want to resolve. And I do see, and this is, it happens everywhere, it's the same people sometimes that even when they've had the training, they keep coming back and asking their manager, I know you told me this last week, but I've forgotten, what's it, and all the time the caller's on hold, and that's the sort of stuff that, we really need to think about removing, and sometimes that is getting smarter in our recruitment phases, and sometimes it's about better knowledge management systems, sometimes it's about embedding training after it's happened, and it's also about team managers not spoon-feeding people, because the temptation is there to just give them the quick answer, but it's give a man a fish and he eats for a day versus teach a man to fish and let them learn it.
If anyone is identifying silence about in part of the calls, if they could perhaps use what they're what the benefits or how they're using silence in the calls they're identifying, experience you've got would be quite useful. Right, we're going to have a look at top tips and also questions from the audience. Quite a big debate happening in the chat room. If you're not already logged in, callcenterhelper.com/chat, about what constitutes average handling time. Should wrap time be included in average handling time or not? And there's some quite interesting debate going there. Teresa made a very interesting point, which is we encourage our staff to do the wrap time during the call. It stops the customers feeling rushed and reduces average handling time. It's reduced our average handling time in our tech support department from upwards of 14 minutes to between 8 and 10 minutes, which I think is quite very good, impressive. It would also increase accuracy because you can validate the data with the customer while they're on the call. But there is a note of caution from Janice, who said we look at time available rather than time spent on calls to look at productivity. But it's good to use for individuals to identify if they're spending too much time on the soft stuff rather than focusing on dealing with the customer's query. And there was another opinion saying on using wrap time, if you include the wrap-up work on the phone call, be careful you don't generate lots and lots of silence and make the customer feel more frustrated because there's just lots of not much happening during the call while the data's going in, all the different databases get opened. So quite interesting. A couple of opinions. Sheena said, how does, an audience question, or question to the audience, how does the AHT vary for companies who have other technology available, i.e. interactive IVRs or web support live chat? We have no other technologies, so ours is constantly over 7 minutes. Is this the norm? Mike, I know you're going to be talking about the way of technology on that, so we won't ask your opinion quite yet, because we'll be covering that later. But it'd be interesting if there's any perspective from the audience. A couple of opinions on your presentation, Carolyn. Fon said, I think it's better to focus on customer satisfaction rather than average handling time. I guess that's much more, Carolyn, that's more outcome-based than efficiency measure.
It would be, yeah, exactly. It's the balance between getting, an effective customer experience but an efficient operation. And it's easy to give fantastic customer experience if you've got all the pots and bags of money in the world to throw at it. But most organisations don't, and we've got to be keeping an eye on the financials as well. Otherwise, we end up in trouble.
And Michelle has said, I concur with the comment. This was about using AHT for we're not using it for employee management down at employment level, but in order to do a correct forecast and a prognosis, average handling time is a KPI. You can't do an accurate forecast without knowing what your average handling time is. So it's not I've never advocated that you should throw it away, but it's not necessarily appropriate. And Karen, I think your point of be careful what's used on the how you use it within the organisation, I think is, and what messages you sent out is quite apt. Michelle has said some call centres calculate AHT as call time, wrap-up, after-call work and hold. Other calculated as the aforementioned, as well as dial time, where the phone rings but the call hasn't been accepted by the agent yet. It's vital AHT is defined in the same way in order to compare it. In my opinion, the correct way to calculate AHT is to measure all time used from the agent is out of availability. I've been offered a call, albeit not yet accepted it, until the time that an agent is ready for the next call again. And certainly I think that's a very appropriate point, but quite an interesting debate on the chat room about that. Kathy says, if you focus on only customer satisfaction, you'll lose the efficiency piece needed, not to impact ABA and service level. ABA average, maybe? Not sure on that one. So, Mike, what's your thought on if you're only measuring customer satisfaction, you'll lose efficiency?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like we can't measure sort of in the context of workforce management and forecasting, planning, tracking. The customer satisfaction measure doesn't really help us there. And regardless of what type of contact it is, whether it's an email or a call, that average handle time needs to be there so that we can do those forecasting. How much resources do I need to cope with the expected volumes? So in that sense, I absolutely get that. It's just, I think it's the priority, if you will, of the like how important, if you like, is it in driving my business. I think absolutely customer satisfaction is a better driver, but certainly from the point of view of organization and efficiency, then certainly AHT has to have its role.
Yeah, I think there's a challenge that we've got a little bit lazy in trying to go for this one metric does it all approach, where we just look at one thing, whether it's average handling time or net promoter. And I think life is far too simplified like that. It's like measuring how happy you are by the amount of money in your bank account.
Yes.
And over the times, I've met some very happy poor people, and I've met some really miserable rich ones, and vice versa. So it might give it an idea, but it's not the only answer.
Or like forecasting the weather with a thermometer.
Yeah.
So you know what the temperature is.
Yeah.
But you don't know what the wind is doing. You don't know what the
Yeah.
The rain is doing, there are all the things that have to come into a weather forecast. So it's kind of the same way. We need lots of different elements to think about in our running the contact center.
And Dell has also said we want to encourage our agents to manage, where possible, the call and add their notation on the calls during the call, which keeps down average handling time. So that seems to be quite a common one. Michelle has also said, I think you should use limited locked wrap time with caution. There's the comment on the chat room of someone who gave us a fixed amount of wrap time. The pros are obviously that agents don't use too much wrap time in wrap, but the cons should be considered as well. An agent has 20 seconds worth of wrap-up time after a call, but decides to use the 40 seconds left to check his phone or talk to the neighbor. It's on one side. Or the agent has wrap-up takes longer than 60 seconds, where he uses the 60 seconds to make himself a note reminder to work later on. So you still have the 60-second wrap-up and maybe 120 to 180 seconds worth of wrap-up administration time later on. And I guess, Carolyn, the danger with that is you don't get round to doing that bit of wrap later on, and you get quite incomplete records.
Yeah, I just have a little bit of a concern about not allowing them to breathe between calls. They are humans, and actually, especially if they've had a difficult call and they need to kind of shake that off before they go into the next one. I am a big fan of protecting wrap time for that purpose. And also making sure that the notes are accurate and they haven't just dumped a load of stuff into the system because they were multitasking and not really focusing, and it's full of mistakes and it's all far more verbose than it needs to be and all of that. So I do like to have some wrap time protected at the end.
Right, well, we're going to go on now and have a look at some of the technology issues. Before we do that, we've got a couple of quick polls to run. The first one is, do you have a single view of the customer? That's where you have a consolidated view that gives a sort of snapshot of of what the customer's doing without having to log into lots of separate databases. Right. So the answer to that, yes. No, we're planning it. Kind of. I think we needed to have something in there, or no. 12% if you're not sure on that one. So. I think this is interesting. How many people do you think are going to have a consolidated view of the customer?
Oh, I think the planning it and kind of might be high. It's hard to give a number.
Well, let's have a look at the number of votes. We've got 197 people have voted on this one, and the answers are 18% yes, 11% we're planning it, 17% kind of. Because and that's not as ridiculous as it sounds, because it's actually quite complex to do in certain instances. 37% no and 16% not sure. So I think there's that's an area we're going to be looking at in a minute. I've just got one more poll before we get onto Mike, and that is, do you use screen pops? And if you're not familiar with a screen pop is where you pop the customer's details onto the computer screen. It's done automatically by the system as a call arrives, typically based on the telephone number they're calling in from, or the customer record that you've got from the interactive
email address or chat as well.
But email or chat. So does that automatically appear up onto the agent screen? The answers are yes, no, yes, no, we're planning it, or no, or not sure on that. So this will be interesting. This technology, I was talking about this technology in 1988, I believe, computer technology integration. It was the hot thing then, so that was 26 years ago. Yes. So be interesting to see how much this newfangled technology has made it into the contact. Let's see. And let's have a look. I've never asked this question before as well. So here's the answer. 53% no. 29% yes, and 13% we're planning it. So this, we did an article a little while ago on the most flopped call center technologies. I wonder this has got immediate productivity savings. Of course. Yeah, I wonder.
But it is also a challenge.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, and don't underestimate it. It is a challenge. And also, when you have lots of mergers and acquisitions, then typically the systems double or triple or more. So in that sense, it's a challenging area. So I'm interested that that's terrific feedback to my couple of slides that I'm looking to deliver in the next few minutes.
Okay, well, we're good. That's a good point now to point across to Mike Murphy, and Mike is going to be taking us through some technology tools that we can use to reduce average handling time. So, Mike, if you'd like to pop these up onto the screen.
Okay, so my screen should be coming across now. So, hi everybody, and yeah, so I'm kind of doing a little bit of a back to basics sort of a few minutes really today, whereas the last time that I was speaking was very much about the sort of vision in the future. But kind of in the context of average handling time, there's kind of two elements that I observe really which are really important, and we're going to talk about the single view of the customer in a moment, but really, IVR is to me where it starts, because that's really where we're looking to sort of, try and actually make life easier for your agent, and try and make that average handle time, if you like, follow through on the back of the actual interaction of the call being nice and easy. So for average handle time, we're not really talking today about, using IVR for call steering, or maybe using IVR to sort of, park my calls while I'm waiting for an available agent, which is unfortunately often how we sort of see it being used these days. What I am actually advocating here really is about, a customer experience that starts as soon as they contact the organization. So I'm sort of smartly greeted, and I'm smartly asked to identify myself. So customer ID is the first step, and from that perspective, have a think about in your organization, how can you get, or how can you sort of like make the customer identification process quite easy. And simple things would be, if you have like a numeric identifier for your customer, then you're off to a great start, because we simply need a DTMF string from the customer on their touchtone pad to actually identify themselves, and that's quite easy. If you don't have that, if you have a combination of your digits and alphanumerics, then that's okay too. We can use speech recognition technology to help us identify those alphas in the same way. But obviously the quickest and sort of like fastest way to deploy would be a customer identification number, which is just based on number digits. Then obviously the second element then is verification. So, we're kind of used to sort of accessing our bank online, or if you like going through to our banks in the sort of a call or contact center or IVR even, and they're quite sort of like disciplined and regimented, and obviously, importantly, tightly controlled, like verification purposes, like a PIN number, for example. So we're not advocating that really. It's more a case of, I just need to back up the fact that the customer's identifier matches with, let's say his phone number, or let's say it matches up with a date of birth. So something simple that we can sort of get the customer to repeat to just give us that clarity. And obviously it depends on the business you're in. If you are a bank, absolutely, we must do it diligently to protect security. But we don't have to be so diligent every time with every offering. And then finally, if we can ask a question about, what is it that the customer wants help with today, then immediately I've got some great information at my disposal. So I know who the customer is. I'm pretty confident that the customer is who they say they are with verification, and I've got a good sense of what it is they're looking for. So to me, for average handle time, if I can achieve that from my IVR, then I'm feeling pretty empowered, and I can do some great things and actually work progressively to take a good chunk out of our sort of average handle time straight away. And then the next point, scrolling on, okay, would really be the kind of the IVR element sort of marries into this notion of the single view of your customer. And really what I wanted to do at the top sort of bullet is just sort of, give you my sort of definition of what that is really. So yes, it is a screen pop with the latest status on all the expected customer questions that we might get from this particular call or email or chat. So from that perspective, I don't care which type of interaction is coming to me. What I want to know is, as the agent, that I'm actually presented with useful information that will give me a head start in being able to answer the customer's query. So things like their last orders, their current reservations, maybe the sort of current status of the shipping of the goods, like where is my stuff type question. If I'm relying on a third-party logistics company, so I need to have a clarity or access to their system so I can understand where their stuff is. Maybe an understanding of their accounts. Is there outstanding monies to be paid? Is there queries going on the bill? Those type of sort of clarity, if you like, of information being presented to me with every contact is very, very powerful. Even to the point of like upsell opportunities from your marketing department. If you know this customer has a product and it's like 2 years old, then let's pop these sort of like latest, maybe iPhone 6 perhaps, to that particular customer if they happen to pop through or call through on a given day. And then most importantly, I think from our perspective, if you like, as a contact center technology vendor, would be, presenting, if you like, the recent contacts that the customer has made with the organization. So the last calls, perhaps, on the last emails, the last chats, maybe even SMS messages. So again, you really have a very powerful presentation of good data, which, like I say, empowers you to be able to sort of be ready, if you will, to answer the question whichever way the customer takes it. And that complementing with the IVR before, you will see is very, very empowering, I would say, for the agent and help them to work very efficiently. Now, if you've been through a sort of CRM deployment, then often you will hear that the sort of like the provision of all these capability comes through these sort of investments, and that's fine. I think some of them do. I don't think all of them do, but certainly you can get a good amount of this sort of capability through CRM systems. But then again, that's not always affordable or practical, perhaps. If you've recently invested quite a lot of money in a billing system, perhaps you don't necessarily want to go and spend some more money on a costly CRM system. So in that sense, what you'll often find, and I think what's kind of been advocated by the feedback from the audience, is that this then becomes the blocker. I've got good information on my customers, but I'm not able to access it quickly, and if you like, efficiently, so that I can actually handle their query in a smart and effective way. And therefore, because I have, if you like, separate systems, I don't actually want to, or I don't think it's going to be easy for me to achieve this type of efficiency. So the point that I want to make in this slide really is that there is another way, faster way I would advocate, and even more cost-effective. And modern sort of like, I would say, good contact center technologies today will have good connectivity tools. You would be able to access any data source, and you should be able to access any data source simultaneously. And by that I mean, like there are customers that we've deployed last year, for example, where we're querying a mainframe, we're querying several databases, and at the same time we're then presenting, as the call gets through to the agent, a screen pop of 4 different systems on the agent's desktop. Okay, and that's been really empowering for that particular customer, and for the agent it's proved to be very, very helpful, and really sort of helped them from agent training, by the way, as sort of a consequence. So although the AHT has improved, also they found that the training for the agent has improved quite nicely too. But the point is that the information is presented, it's the information that the agent needs, and then they can progress quite quickly into the conversation and solve the customer's problem. And like Carla advocated earlier, I mean, these are systems, so in that sense, the efficiencies that we can gain from here really should be repeatable, and they should bring a good, I'm thinking easily sort of 15 to 20 seconds in IVR, plus maybe 15 to 20 seconds from a single view of the customer. So already we're close to sometimes a minute, if you like, of reduction in average handle time, which is, I think, quite significant and massive.
And I think, Mike, one of the criticisms against, systems like this is they're quite expensive to put in. But
correct.
I think, the sort of time savings that I see in terms of where people just, simply come back from a shift, have to log into lots of different systems,
right.
Putting callers on hold, it is quite easy to build a business case to actually get the investment.
So I would absolutely advocate
type of technology.
No question, because the ROI is absolutely there, and you can see by the, just like I said about the number of minutes that we can, like the minutes perhaps that we can save per call. So that's absolutely the ROI. But also what I would advocate, Jonty, is that today it's much easier. I think, before you were talking about maybe a 6-month project to do this type of thing. In the customer that I was talking about earlier that we did last year, you're talking like 7 days of their own developer work. Okay, so it wasn't even that they had to go through the third party. They were able to take a guide and actually then in-house bring this kind of capability to their organization, and they were just thrilled, if you like, with the results that they achieved.
Yeah.
So I think in the past it was very sort of complex and difficult. Today it's very, very straightforward, I would say.
Yeah.
So that point about cost and ROI is absolutely paramount. So then the next thing really I would say is it's just kind of more about best practice really, and sort of having made an attempt to improve your IVR experience and worked hard at giving this sort of single view of your customer to your agent, then put yourself in your customer role and then start to be quite critical. So I'm talking about sort of mystery shopping yourself in a way like we used to do in the past. So taking some recordings of IVR transactions where we're doing sort of ID and V, and is the customer experience in that area correct? Are we finding the interface clumsy? Are there ways that I could improve the prompts? Is there something in there that I can make better so that it's easier for the customer to ID and see themselves? And obviously the second one then would be when we deliver a screen pop to the agent, is it coming through timely? That's a really important question. And if it isn't, then we've got to get onto it and get it fixed. But the point is, these are the areas and these are the tools I can use, call recording, screen recording. I can use them to verify that the gains that I'm expecting are actually being delivered. And then don't forget that point like Carla mentioned earlier about speech analytics. I mean, that's a kind of a new tool to our our bag in the recent years, and it's really, really powerful at grabbing those minutes of, like you say, silence time perhaps, and then areas where we kind of think there's something going on but we're not sure. And speech analytics can be quite good at helping me to I want to spot if this is actually happening, and then at the end of the day seeing, well, how many times do you actually see that? And from that you'll explore and find different ways where the design or the experience can be improved for the customer. But I think, given the benefits we're looking to bring to the customer, number one, to the agents, number two, and then to the overall business, number three, I would say that you really must get assertive with challenging the guys in-house who own the technology. I mean, it's kind of very easy to, if I jump to the last one here and say, like, you're getting pushed back, then it's just too difficult. That might be a good reason why you're getting quite a lot of no's, if you like, in things like screen pop. Things like slow system responses causing time delays. A slow system is just a lack of investment. And with the right IT eyes on it, you can fix it. So from that perspective, I would say, don't let your IT systems let you down. Be assertive with your IT owners and get them to deploy and fix the things which might be causing you frustrations, especially around this area. And then lastly, really, I think there's an important role for the vendor to play here, really. What I mean really is more around expertise and experience. The tools that I've just described are kind of, they're the tools that we're providing for our customers. They're not like they're rocket science, but they're very, very effective. And if your vendor isn't coming to you, if you like, with ideas and knowledge and experience on how to pull these improvements, if you like, in your operations, then you just question their role, if you like, in helping you get the achievements you want to achieve. Certainly, a vendor with high experience of integrations is very important. But like I said, in the example of the customer earlier, they kind of did the integration work themselves. They kind of found that from their own team was the fastest way to deploy, and obviously the most cost-effective. I would advocate that find the kind of tools that are proven. From this perspective, a lot of the tools that we see in our contact centers today are quite old. They've been out there for a long, long time, and so have the vendors. So from that perspective, there's quite a lot of old thinking, I would say, in the industry, which kind of needs a good scour and shake up. So from that perspective, you look for modern tools, like with that rich palette of interfaces that I just showed you, where we can access the systems wherever they are, however many they are, whatever type they are. So just have a think about that particular point. I think it's important. In the context of best practice again, identify and secure your first goal. It's quite straightforward to say, well, for the highest volume interaction we get today, let's work on doing an AHT effort on that and getting a good IVR interaction, getting a good complementary screen pop, and getting that first key saving. But then, as soon as that is achieved, you've got to go on to identifying the next target goal. So that might be the second highest volume of interaction, and then get that similarly improved. And then, like I say, repeat, because the pursuit of average handle time improvement, it never stops. And if it does, then we're kind of missing a trick, and we're going to end up with efficiencies creeping up on us that we didn't expect. So I suppose really in summary of that, it's just a case where, kind of view your vendor as a trusted advisor, and if they're not coming across that way to you, then find a good vendor who can. And because these savings, these improvements are absolutely out there, they're straightforward, and they will deliver superb, improvements to your average handle time.
Indeed, thank you very much indeed for that, Mike. And we're just going to do a quick recap now of all of the 10 points that we had on average handling time. So use AHT as a backroom measure. Use AHT in conjunction with other measures and not on its own. Review agent utilization, as there's lots of other things other than talk time where you can make savings. And ensure messages from the consistent from the boardroom down to the floor. So it's very easy to say we don't measure people on AHT, and they actually do. Train agents in rapport, empathy, and handling difficult calls, as complex calls can take longer. And tied into that is also handling runaway talkers from customers. And review agent utilization. We look at identify and verify callers in the IVR, develop a single view of the customer with things like screen pop, for instance, and that the cost of that have been coming down in recent years. Use screen recordings to identify failures, and fix slow and broken computer systems. Those are just 10 of the many handouts that we've been going today. We're going to have a quick look now at some more of the top tips and questions from the audience. Alistair has said, agents are often the ones who deal with real-time queries from customers. So select certain team members within your team to become a specific call driver champion. Look at a particular type of call.
Yep.
In morning huddles, meetings, etc. They could be the ones giving tips and tricks in how to solve those issues quickly. And that could work really well. I think that's really good. Kathy has said, by managing the utilization of the representatives, we have found some abusing various statuses, i.e. break, bathroom, meeting, etc., all without the proper management of the supervisors. So here's a tip. Utilization reports will show you where time is being wasted. And I had a quick look today. We published an article on Call Center Helper called 7 Tricks That Agents Play and How to Spot Them. Yes. And I haven't had a look at the comments, but there seem to be lots of comments on that article, so there may be a few tips there. And I'll take another tip for the minute. Mark says, one of the things that I did was to analyze hold reasons and compare them against different agents handling the same types of calls. What was found is showed that agents were using different methods to get the same information within the systems. Based on that, we created cheat sheets for popular call types, so as how to streamline how applications were used for the more common types of queries.
It's a kind of good workaround to the technical challenge, shall we say, of having to go and find the information and not knowing where it is. So obviously we would advocate just bringing it to the agent every time, whether they need it or not at that time. So
Carolyn, a number of ones around training on identifying different call types. Have you got or techniques that you tend to use for that, Carolyn?
Sorry, from the training side, do you mean?
Yeah. Have you got any tips on training on how to deal with different call types?
Yeah, I mean, we look at it more from dealing with different types of customer. So obviously the different types of call should be handled under job-specific training, but from a soft skills perspective, which is what we do, we look at getting them to identify the type of customer that they've got on the phone within the first 10 to 20 seconds that customer is speaking. We want them to be thinking in an emotionally intelligent way about, what is the personality of this customer, what mood are they in, are they a talker, do they seem quite quiet, does their speech seem clipped and they're in a rush, or do they sound like they want to talk about the weather, so that from a very early stage in the call, the advisor is able to tailor that experience for that customer rather than thinking, right, I have to build rapport with everyone in this very set way. Some people don't want it. Some customers just want to come on, get the job done and go. So that's how we train them with that.
And we've had a tip in from Colin. He says, call control is essential. Ask probing questions, sound interesting. Repeating back to callers is a great way to make the call feel worthwhile, but also ensuring call handling times are kept to a respectable level. Certainly repeating information back to customers is a great way of ensuring that you get your accuracy maintained in the customer databases. So some quite interesting tip from Colin. We've got a load more there. What we'll do is we'll summarize those into an article which we're going to publish in a short while. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. So in 1 or 2 words, please could you type into the chat room what you liked best about today's webinar. A copy of the slides are available on Call Center Helper. That will be on our webinar page, which is you can get to through callcenterhelper.com recorded webinars. You can also watch the replay. That will be available later on this afternoon. So we've got a few more webinars in our quite a number in our autumn series. So just like to thank our 2 speakers. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining us today.
My pleasure. One of my favourite topics to talk about.
Thank you. And Mike, thank you for joining us today on our 100th webinar.
Indeed. Thank you, Jonty. I wish I had a bottle of champagne to open for you to say congratulations.
Well, we'd have perhaps a virtual bottle. So thank you. I think we've got some chocolate, so we might have a chocolate instead. Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we're going to be doing a scheduling masterclass next week at the same time, so hope you can join us then. Thanks very much, and goodbye to everyone. Bye-bye.